Have you ever stopped to think about how we use language? I mean, really think about it. We can say things that look totally straightforward, but they're actually doing something way more complicated, something almost mysterious. Well, today we're going to dive headfirst into this puzzle of language and belief, and we've got one of the 20th century's most brilliant minds to guide us.
Just look at these two sentences for a second. At first glance, they look almost the same, right? Grammatically, they're built in a very similar way. The bus passes. The piece passes. But we all know instinctively that they are doing completely different jobs. One is just a simple fact about the world. The other, well, what exactly is it doing? And that simple question opens up a huge can of worms.
And that can of worms is really this. What are we actually doing when we talk about God? Are we trying to state facts about how the universe works, like a scientist would? Or is religious language playing an entirely different game altogether?
So yeah, that's the big mystery we're going to try to unravel today. And to do that, we're turning to the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein for some help.
Okay, so let's get into it. Wittgenstein had this totally revolutionary idea. He said that if you really want to get what a word means, looking it up in a dictionary isn't going to cut it. No, you have to look at how people actually use it in real life. He called this whole concept language games. Think about it like a game of chess. What does the knight piece mean? Well, it's not just its little horse shape, right? Its meaning comes from the rules, the fact that it can move in that L shape. Words, Wittgenstein said, are exactly the same. Their meaning comes from the rules of the game we're playing. And those games can be anything, asking a question, telling a joke, giving a command, or, praying. And here's the next layer. These language games don't just pop up out of nowhere. Wittgenstein said they grow out of what he called a form of life. Now, that's a big phrase, but it just means the whole messy, complicated web of our culture, our history, even our biology. It's the soil that our language grows in. It's what makes the games make sense in the first place. So let's circle back to our bus stop example. This is why the bus passes the bus stop and the peace of the Lord passes understanding feels so incredibly different. They might have a similar surface grammar. The words look like they're in the right order, but their depth grammar, what we're actually doing with them, is just worlds apart. One is describing a thing, the other is expressing this profound spiritual state. All right, so we've got these new tools: language games, forms of life, depth grammar. What happens when we use them to look at religious language? Well, one really common interpretation of Wittgenstein's work, called non-cognitivism, says that religious language isn't about stating facts at all. So, from this point of view, when somebody says God exists, they aren't making a claim that can be proven or disproven like a scientific hypothesis. The statement isn't true or false in that way. It's doing something totally different. Wittgenstein gives us a clue right here. He suggests a religious belief is less about a fact and more like a passionate commitment to a system of reference. Think about that. It's not just nodding and saying, yep, that's true. It's about adopting a whole framework for your life, a lens through which you see and judge everything. This is a perfect example. According to this view, talking about the Last Judgment isn't like a weather forecast for the apocalypse. It's a powerful picture that shapes how a believer acts, how they make choices right here and right now. It gives their life a particular kind of meaning. And Wittgenstein really pushes this idea to its limit. He says, look, even if you could prove that the historical stuff in the Gospels was totally false, a true believer's faith might not even be touched. Why? Because the belief isn't about whether a specific event happened thousands of years ago. It's about the commitment to the picture and the way of life that it inspires. But here's where it gets tricky. This interpretation runs into some pretty serious problems. I mean, if religious talk isn't about facts and can't be true or false, then it's like it exists in its own little bubble, completely sealed off from reality, from criticism, from everything.
So first off, if these claims aren't true or false, you can't really argue with them, can you? You can't use evidence to challenge them, they're just immune. And the other big problem is, this just doesn't sound like how many religious people actually talk about their faith. People argue, they doubt, they worry about conflicts with science, all things that imply they do think their beliefs are about what's actually true.
And that leads to this really powerful question. When someone has a crisis of faith, what are they even doubting? If belief is just a commitment to a way of life, what's there to call into question? You have to be questioning the truth of it all, right? This is why some philosophers think that simple non-cognitivist take is, well, just a misunderstanding of what Wittgenstein was really getting at. They say he was pointing to something much more complex, a more nuanced truth about belief.
So here's the crucial point. It's not an either-or situation. This more nuanced view says that religious claims are about facts. They do have a true or false component, but, and this is the key, they are also completely tied up with a passionate, life-changing commitment to those facts. Looked at this way, Wittgenstein wasn't trying to say religious beliefs are just nice stories. He was trying to show us that they are so much more than simple statements of fact. To treat "I believe in God" like you treat "I believe it's going to rain" is to miss the entire point, to miss all the emotional depth and the way it shapes a person's entire life.
And this all leads us to the biggest takeaway from Wittgenstein, something that goes way beyond just talking about religion. He basically changed the way we think about meaning itself.
At the end of the day, his core insight is this. Meaning isn't some secret property hidden inside a word. Meaning is alive. It's dynamic. Meaning is what we do with our words. It lives in how we use them, the context we're in, and the rules of whatever language game we're playing at that moment.
And that's what I want to leave you with. Once you start seeing language as a series of games, you start seeing them everywhere. What are the rules of the language game being played in a political rally, or in a poem, or even in a scientific theory? Because if you want to understand what's really being said, you first have to understand the game.